I am joined by the wonderful Heidi Skudder, founder of Positively Parenthood. Heidi is an absolute expert when it comes to all things babies and postpartum.
My biggest thing with clients, and I think I hear you say this a lot, is like knowledge is power.
When we started thinking about having another child, it was one of those conversations that me and my husband were literally like, we have to do sleep differently.
It peaked at month 2 and it averaged that it was normal for a baby to cry for 3 to 4 hours a day. I saw it and I was like, why are we normalising this?
Hello, I'm Pip and welcome to the Midwife Pip podcast, the home of expert information and real chats on all things pregnancy, birth and beyond. Pregnancy can feel like information overwhelm at times, and naturally there's a big focus on pregnancy and birth. And then in an instant, you find yourself navigating the 4th trimester and the postpartum. And honestly, I hear time and time again, women say that they wish they'd been prepared for some of the bumps in the road that can come once their little one's in their arms. And this week, I am joined by the wonderful Heidi Skudder, founder of Positively Parenthood. Heidi is an absolute expert when it comes to all things babies and postpartum. So I'm really excited to be able to talk to Heidi about some of the things that may crop up in your parenting journey and how we can troubleshoot through them. But before we jump in, I have to mention that Heidi is now also, very excitingly, an author to her brand new book, Your Positive Baby Sleep Book, which you can find linked in the episode description today. So welcome, Heidi, and thank you so much for joining me. I have to confess that between our motherhood, working life juggle, we have been committed, uncommitted, and we're finally here. So I'm so pleased we're talking.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me back as well. That's really lovely.
Oh, it's always great to talk to other real mums, because I know you're very much, a mum of 3. You have still got one that is very much in the toddlerhood baby era that's kind of navigating it personally, but also has all that experience professionally, because it definitely brings another dimension, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard, isn't it? Because you almost know too much, I think, actually. And we'll go through it, but especially in that 4th trimester with my daughter, who's now 1, so technically still a baby, or at least I'm holding on to the fact that she's still a baby. She's 100% a baby until she's 2, 5. But yeah, it's really hard. And I think my biggest thing with clients, and I think I hear you say this a lot, is like knowledge is power. But then there's almost a tipping point when you're a sort of expert, so to speak, where you know so much that maybe you're seeing stuff that maybe isn't even there. And we can come on to this, but it can make it challenging in its own way, whilst being extremely grateful for all of the knowledge that I've learned that was able to help me through.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I find that it's different when it's me. I'm a mum in this journey. I'm not a midwife, very much in pregnancy. I've said to my midwife, treat me like an expectant mum, because that brain is so different. And I think even more so when you transition postnatally, because of the hormones, the sleep deprivation, you just aren't in your normal sound mind anyway. So to be able to have that rationalized brain that you would give advice to other parents with is so hard when it's actually yourself going through that journey. And that comparison and kind of awareness, I think, is completely different when it's actually you.
And that's the thing about that kind of 4th trimester, that postnatal experience, is that we're all at the same kind of place as a mother. Like, everyone is slightly irrational, everyone is sleep deprived, no matter whether you're a sleep coach or you're not a sleep coach. Everyone is finding it difficult. And I think that's where it's really nice to relate to others and have these conversations, to show people that it doesn't matter what you do or who you are, that period is extremely challenging for even the pros. Right?
Yeah, 100%. We're only human, and we are dictated by these smaller humans, which I'm about to remember again in a couple of weeks' time.
I'm so excited for you.
I know, it's like any time now. My 2-year-old was telling them at nursery yesterday that mummy had the baby, And his key worker was like, it's really weird that Finley's dad didn't mention that when he dropped him off this morning. And I turned up to pick him up like, nope, very much still pregnant, guys. Very much
Oh
wishful thinking, wishful thinking. Now, yeah, there are challenges, aren't there? And it's so multifactorial. There can be so many different challenges for mums, babies. What are some of the common things that you see, Heidi, and that parents reach out to you with that they are struggling with in that postnatal stage?
God. Do you know what? There are so many, and I'm trying to think which would be the most useful to kind of talk about. But I think one of the biggest ones, actually, and I see this a lot, and it's gone into a lot of my content in both the book and also online, is this idea of why can I never put my baby down?
Yes.
It comes up all of the time, like all of the time. And it can be very polarized as well in terms of this kind of thought process behind it. So what we mean by this is you've had your baby, let's say you're 4 or 5 weeks in, right? So birth recovery has happened, is still happening, but that first 2 weeks, that kind of precious 2 weeks is over. Maybe life is slightly returning to normal. Potentially you're on your own quite a lot of the time. We live in a culture where, rightly or wrongly, we are mostly on our own. Sometimes you might get a mum move in or not, or a mother-in-law, but otherwise it's not like other cultures where we shut the doors for 40 days or 60 days and we're cooked for. And do you know what I mean? It's completely
100%.
different.
And also visitors all like come, don't they? Like initially, and then what generally while your partner's like perhaps on paternity leave,
Yeah.
and then everyone kind of goes back onto normal life, and you're like, oh, I'm still here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we have to be realistic about it. Like, it's so different to other cultures. So then when we look at, okay, well, why can't I put my baby down? And that's one of the biggest questions. So let's say you are 5 weeks in listening to this and you're walking around with your baby in your sling and you're trying to get them off to sleep and you're thinking to yourself, like, why will they never be put down? Personally, I feel like the most it's difficult, isn't it? But the information that's not that useful is, okay, cool, that's normal.
Yeah.
Because in a way, like, of course, our babies want to be close to us. We've got this idea of the 4th trimester where they still feel a part of us. So absolutely, they like their snuggles. They like to be on you, skin to skin, all of that. I think we both promote all of those sorts of things when it comes to skin bonding, etc. But where we have to draw the line is between like likes to be held, likes to be on me, versus physically can't be put down onto their back, can never be put down. And that 5-week-old postpartum mother is pounding the streets because that's her only option. And she's being told that's normal. Whereas actually what's happening is maybe that baby has some tension from birth and their neck feels a bit funny. So when they are put down, it's not comfortable. And that would mean, looking at seeing an osteopath and seeing if that osteopath can help the baby. In other European countries, osteos are part of the postnatal package. All women and babies see osteos. Like, it's mind-blowing, whereas obviously where we are in the UK, it's not. And if you do want to see one, you've got to find the money to see one, which is so hard, right? Not everyone can do that. There are, though, I must say, there are amazing osteo charity clinics where actually there are people training and you can go and just pay what you can. So if anyone's listening thinking, oh, that does sound like my baby, definitely look into that. But we've got so many different reasons why babies can't be put down. So they might be having tension, they might be full of wind, and maybe not when you're pregnant, but as an adult, if you've got wind, actually, if you wiggle around in the night and turn onto your tummy and maybe do a couple of farts, you're okay.
Yeah.
But as a baby, you can't do that,
Yeah.
right? If you're being put down on your back, you're like, actually, no, I don't want that. I'm going to cry. Pick me back up, please, because that's more comfortable upright. So we've got wind, we've got body tension, and we've also got something that actually a lot of babies have, and I want to say suffer from, but I don't mean like in pain, but lots of babies do actually have a little bit of mild reflux. So that comes from lots of different things. That can come from air intake, that can come from tummy, gut. But ultimately, if they're on their backs, then that's also not going to work. So I think it's really important to say, yeah, absolutely, babies love to be on you. That's great. But if you are that mother walking around going, why won't my baby be put down? Please know. And there are like 3 whole chapters in this book that talk about those reasons. Like, there are lots of different reasons why they might not want to be put down ever. And it can be easier and it can be better than that. And that's for you as a mother to survive. I think it's really important to know that.
Definitely. And I know that you've got loads of information in the book around infant sleep. And I feel like this, again, is one of those aspects where certain sort of paradoxes are normalized or shamed sometimes. And do you know what, Heidi? It's something that I really fell into the trap with our first son. And when we started thinking about having another child, it was one of those like conversations that me and my husband were literally like, we have to do sleep differently because we had no clue. And I think there was almost this expectation that because I was a midwife, I'd understand baby stuff later on. And I was like, I'm great until 2 weeks. And then I've got absolutely no idea. Like that is not that
Yeah.
is not my expertise as a midwife. That's why they have people like you. And it was one of those where he would sleep independently in his cot, but he wake up every single hour to feed for about half an hour for 10 months of life. And it was so hard. And all I knew about sleep promotion or teaching or training or whatever, like people have heard, was that you just had to leave your baby to cry. And I was like, I just can't do that. I cannot close the door and leave him to cry. I just can't do that. And I feel like it's one of those things where people don't quite understand what there is between doing absolutely nothing and, like you say, that mum that is driving around the block at night to get their baby to sleep because they won't sleep in their cot, or parents taking turns. You hear those stories, they're taking turns, one's holding them for an hour,
Yeah,
then the next one's
all
holding
the
them
time, exactly.
for like months and months. And we know, like, when they're poorly, you have those odd periods of time, but to be doing that consistently, like you say, isn't okay or healthy for parents either. And I was not my most present, loving mother when I was in that amount of sleep deprivation. And when I started to learn about actually things that you can do that are much more gentle and absolutely are so far away from that
Mm.
sleep training that we think of just leave them to cry and close the door and eventually they'll go to sleep, I was like, wow, it's like opened this whole world and this whole other box of tools and techniques that I just think parents need to know about
Yeah,
earlier.
100%. And I think where I'm coming from with the book is it's all focused on the fourth trimester. And the whole point is, like, you pick up this book, right? There is zero leaving to cry for any amount of time because you don't need to do that in the first 3-4 months, sometimes ever, but you don't need to do that in the fourth trimester because it's not about like behavior and habit and stuff. It's about, to be honest with you, comfort levels pretty much. So if your baby is comfortable, and I'll say this till the cows come home, if your baby is comfortable, fed well, feeding is going to plan, obviously you've had the right help and support with that, they're not taking loads of air, and you are mindful of little sleep bits like awake windows, maybe some white noise, pink noise, etc., they can sleep. Like, they actually are born biologically with the ability to sleep. It's just that, unfortunately, and my honest dream, not because I want to sell books, but genuinely because I think it'd be so helpful, would actually be to give this book to everyone who leaves hospital, because then you will know what you can actually do
Mm.
instead of this kind of back and forth rhetoric, which is like, either you leave them to cry or you're spoiling them or you hold them the whole time. And it doesn't help. Social media doesn't help. I know we spoke about this before. Doesn't help that there was a massive debate last week on a daytime TV show about whether you should do cry out or not. It's
Yeah.
constantly polarizing parents when actually there is so much good stuff in the middle. And honestly, I'm so passionate about it because I think there could be so many more comfortable sleeping babies and happier parents if this information was out there.
Oh, so true. It's so true. So, comfort for babies, Heidi. Tell us more about how, as parents, we can actively try and make our babies more comfortable, because that sounds like it's going to create an easier life for everybody, which I'm definitely here for.
It's, it's a great word, isn't it? And I actually saw the other day on Instagram this graph. Someone had put out this graph of average numbers of crying for a baby across the first 3-4 months, so the fourth trimester. And it was like it peaked at month 2 and it averaged that it was normal for a baby to cry for 3 to 4 hours a day. And
Wow, that seems like a lot.
I saw it and I was like, why are we normalizing this?
Yeah.
That is not okay to normalize. Okay, cool. When your baby hits 6 to 8 weeks, they might cry for 3-4 hours a day. What is crying? Crying is communication. Yeah. Crying is telling you, me, whoever it is, Mum, I've got tummy ache. Mum, I feel really bloated. Mum, I've got too much air. Mum, I've been awake for 5 hours, and maybe you're not that mindful of awake windows because no one told you. So for me, like to normalize the fact that babies cry, I mean, of course, that is how they communicate. So we're not getting rid of crying altogether. But I would say if your baby is like really not sleeping or crying a lot, it's probably comfort. And what we mean by comfort is how comfortable they are. So have they got a tongue tie that could be affecting their latch? Are they taking in air when they're feeding? Are they carrying tension from birth or the way that they were delivered, which means that actually, the neck's kind of squiffy to one side or the diaphragm's a bit tight, and that's what an osteo can help with. Are they just trying to tell you that, yeah, like I said, I've been awake for 4 hours. No one leaves hospital with an awake windows table, do they? Going, by the way, your baby will be their best self if they're awake for don't stress about it. That's really important because you don't want anxiety, but about an hour or so for the first 6 weeks. And after that, maybe it's about an hour and a half. Yeah. It's so difficult. And then you end up scrolling at 2 a.m. And then
I'm buying
you know what
every
happens
sleep
then?
gadget. Like, I think my Amazon delivery man thought I had a real issue because every day there'd be another sleep gadget arriving in the post that I'd ordered at 2 a.m. when I was scrolling.
Yeah, exactly. You end up buying everything. And I actually got asked last week on another podcast, like, what's the one thing you would recommend that parents do buy? And I said basically like not to say that you have to buy my products, but just invest in a decent quality sleep book or course or whatever it is, but something that tells you what to expect and what you can do instead of relying on gadgets that keep changing, keep racking up the old credit card bill. And actually, you probably don't use any of them for more than 4 or 5 days anyway, because you realize the problem is not the gadget being to work, it's actually the baby and their comfort levels and that they cannot sleep.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of those things that I would just love women to know about before their baby's in their arms. And I know that sometimes feels like such a barrier because there's so much information, isn't there, in pregnancy? And I know I'm part of that. I want to inform women about pregnancy and birth. And we want birth to be as smooth and positive because that helps with this fourth trimester piece immensely. But I think even if you don't have the headspace to think, right, how can I plan and educate myself about sleep or baby comfort or reflux or whatever that might look like, just knowing where those resources are going to be sometimes is really helpful. So at 2 a.m., rather than being like, right, Amazon, I'm going to order this and this that rocks the cot and this magic noise or whatever, actually you've got a source that you've planned that you're going to go to. Sometimes I think just that breaks down some of that overwhelm and anxiety postnatally.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's so important. And what we also need to talk about, I suppose, is the other side of it, which is that if your baby's not sleeping, there's loads of potential as to why they might not be, and the fact that you can have sleep. We're not talking 11, 12 hours at night. We're talking like longer stretches than every hour. Yeah. So there is potential for a newborn to sleep well and comfortably. The other side of it, I think, is if you're doing well holding your baby, or if you love contact naps, or I'm guessing I'm probably not going to say if you love waking every hour, but like if what you're doing is sustainable for you right now, maybe you do have a partner who helps you, maybe you do have family around, or maybe you're just loving it, then the other side to it is also don't feel like you have to do this stuff. And it works both ways, like knowledge is power. But what I don't want to do, and what I've massively made sure I've done in every chapter in the book, is that this is my information, this is the advice, this is what I know works. But then I always come back to the gut instinct. But what does your gut say? Because if I'm here talking about practicing putting your baby down for 1 nap a day, and you don't want to, don't do it. So it's that whole like moving away from that polarization and just knowledge is power, but also gut feel, gut instinct, maternal instinct all the way through.
And I think that lack of comparison is so important. Like, I know there's that good old saying that comparison is the thief of joy, but I feel like you're so vulnerable to it in that time of your life. And like you say, for someone, actually, the idea of a contact nap, make a cup of tea beforehand, put Netflix on, you're like, this is great. Why would I want to not do that? Whereas for other mums, actually, maybe they've got other children they want to then spend that one-to-one time with, or they've got other commitments. And actually for them, it's really important that they have that space. And there just is no right or wrong, is there? Like, it's so important that we don't try and compare or feel that judgment. And I think there's so much judgment when it comes to motherhood. Like, it is insane.
Yeah, it's honestly nuts. And I mean, obviously we're both on social, so you'll be aware of it too. But when I put out content, the kind of polarizing comments and views is just, it's just madness. And actually, I'm never very forceful. I'm never like, this is the way you have to do it. I'm just saying, this is what I know can help, right? But people can get on their high horses about it. So I think, you know, if you are also in that fourth trimester, another challenge, I suppose, that we could talk about is the information overload, is the fact that sometimes you just want, and even myself, right, I had all of my knowledge, and we had a right old journey with tongue tie and oral function and stuff
I
like that.
remember following your journey.
It was, yeah, it was really hard. And I remember sitting with, at the time, another person, a tongue tie expert, who was sat on my couch chatting to me. And she was like slagging off the other experts and rah, 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 and I was just sat there. I literally wanted to cry because it's like, I'm just, as going back to our first point, I'm just a mum. I just want to know what's best for my baby, not what he says, she says, that's not true. And I really felt vulnerable in that moment because I was like, wow, I'm putting myself into, and as you said, like, you put out information, I also put out information. So we are part of that overload. I like in a positive way, but you never know, right? Like, it's really hard. But it is insanely difficult when everyone's saying completely different things. And that's where we lose that instinct, that maternal, what do we want to do, what feels right? And I followed a journey which actually ended up working, but that did go against some of what some of the experts said that I had talked to, but it ended up working for me. Yeah. So,
And
and
that's what matters, isn't it? That's the thing. I often say to parents, what would you do if no one else ever knew? Because I think we're so easily influenced, sometimes unknowingly, by external factors and external influencers, or what we think we should be doing, or, you know, what our mother-in-law is going to say or suggest. And actually, it's like, what would you do if nobody else ever knew? And I think that can really ground us in our values and what's right for us as a family quite often.
Yeah, 100%. It's really, really important. And that comes down to feeding, birth, sleep, everything. Like, every single topic in that journey has made to be on Instagram and stuff controversial. And that's when you just have to kind of almost like sit in a dark room, close your eyes, hug your baby tight and go, what feels right? Like, is this working for us or is this not? You know?
And knowing that what works one month, actually the next month you might be like, no, it's not working anymore. And that's okay too. Like, it's not, you don't have to make one decision like, that's it now. You know, I've made that choice. We're going to roll with it. Actually, it's okay to change and adapt.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like with sleeping. So obviously you talked about your hourly waking. So we had with my third, so daughter recently, quite a rough fourth trimester. So I actively chose to co-sleep with her at night time. Never thought I would, really, because the boys were very much like in their baskets from day 2 or whatever else. But there was something about it, whether it was that she was a girl, she was my last, the journey that we were on, the amount of discomfort she was in. But I chose to co-sleep. I think we ended up doing it for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 weeks. I can't remember. But then I was able to change my mind and say, actually, now you're going into your side sleep at your crib. And that was okay. Like, it's okay to one day wake up and go, that's not working for us anymore. And then the whole, like, putting her into her own room and stuff like that. Like, it's different for everyone, but know that you can make changes if you want to.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful message, such a powerful message. Now, Heidi, everyone that comes on the podcast, I ask for 3 top tips. So I wonder if you could share with us 3 top tips around navigating anything, I suppose, postnatal life.
Yeah, okay. I'm trying to think about what I said last time and want to
And how we can make them different. If you haven't listened back to Heidi's previous episode, then do, because that was also full of golden information about preparing and planning for this stage.
And that was all like the kind of birth recovery and stuff. So I'm going to go with like on the ground tips to making baby more comfortable. Okay. So for me, number 1 would be, if you can and you can find access to one, I personally would gift every baby an osteopath session in the first few weeks, because it's so important for feeding, for sleeping. It can make a massive difference. And like I said, there are those charity clinics where you kind of pay what you can afford. And if that's nothing, then that's nothing as well. So that would be not necessarily number 1, but quite up there in terms of making your baby comfortable. Number 2, I'm going to go with the whole normalization of crying. So yes, babies cry, but if your baby seems, they get labeled like spirited or
Yeah.
difficult, or
Yeah.
I've just got, my mother-in-law said I didn't, or you didn't sleep, or whatever, whoever didn't sleep when they were young. So it's just genetic. And I'm like,
Speaking to the wrong person.
potentially, like some of us prefer early waking, going to bed later. Potentially, yeah, absolutely genetic, but not to the point where you've got a baby who's crying and never going to sleep, and an excuse is not just like, oh, it's in your genes, that's what your father did. There is always a reason, so I would look at the reason behind it. And number three, yeah, for me it would be about what I call gentle sleep shaping. So you don't have to make that decision if you don't want to. Not that it is this decision, but that it's polarized as like cry it out or do nothing. And I think this is where you're going to come from this time. And you've got my book, so hopefully it'll be helpful. But as you go through those first 2 weeks, that first 6 weeks, the sort of 12 weeks, 4 months, etc., there's little things that you can do to it's a bit of a tongue twister, slowly shift sleep in the direction that you want it to be, sleeping really well. So you don't have to, if you don't want to make that decision later on, because actually you have babies that sleep well from the word go because you have that knowledge behind you. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. And I think that's where, if you can find that headspace to get that knowledge before you hit that difficult time or that real sleep deprivation, it's just so empowering, and just gives you that calm confidence of, no, you're not going to remember it all, but you're going to know where to go when you do need that extra support.
100%.
Heidi, thank you so much. For those of you listening that are feeling like you need more of Heidi in your life, I don't blame you. You can find Heidi on Instagram at Positively Parenthood, and your Positive Baby Sleep book is also available now and linked in the episode description. So thank you so much for your time and for all of the work that you do, because I know behind the scenes it's a big old juggle to support parents at such an important time. Thank you, Heidi.
Oh, pleasure. We'll talk again soon when baby arrives. Thanks, my love. Take care.